Hello and welcome back to the One Winning Pod Ravens History Corner. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving yesterday and has plenty of leftovers to eat today to enjoy and tide you over until Sunday when the Ravens will be traveling to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars and hopefully have a better offensive performance than what we saw from them against Carolina last week. We talked about it extensively on the podcast while the Ravens were able to get out a victory in which they never trailed. We were certainly expecting a lot more from the offense in that game against the Carolina defense with a lot of good players, but really as a unit, not among the better in the league right now, to put it frankly. So, for this week, I wanted to look back at some times in Ravens history where the offense had a dud week in a game where we were expecting more from them, and just kind of how the team responded to get an idea of what we could expect from the team. Every season is different. Every team is different, but just an idea of some things that Ravens have done in the past to recover from those poor performances. And coincidentally enough, the first game I'm going to look at, this is a game we talked, again, a little bit about in the podcast, was a game down in Jacksonville. 2011, the Ravens came in with a 4-1 record on Monday Night Football to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. The Jaguars are 1-5. And while their defense wasn't terrible, they certainly also weren't doing particularly well. We were expecting the Ravens offense to have a good, be able to have a good effort against this defense and to put this game away early, and that just was not the case. While the defense came to play and shut out the Jaguars offense to the tune of 12 points, the Ravens offense could just not get it going, only scoring a touchdown late in the fourth quarter, just before the 2-minute warning, and would lose the game 12-7. So, needless to say, fans were a little perplexed as to what was going on there. While the offense wasn't among the league's best that year, they were still pretty competent, and this performance was really unexpected. And then the next week, you had the Ravens travel home to Arizona, playing an Arizona team that also only had one win on the season, quarterbacked by Kevin Kolb, and they came out flat offensively again. You found going into halftime, the Ravens were down in this game 24-6, after a week where they couldn't score more than 7 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense that was struggling. Ravens fans, we had some questions here, like what was going on with the offense, what was going to fix it. And in the second half, the Ravens, they figured out the formula was just feeding the ball to the former Arizona Cardinal himself. Anquan Bolden would have a huge game in the second half. He would finish the game from a statistical perspective, seven catches for 145 yards, including a catch that would set up the game-winning field goal. So the Ravens would finally refine their offense in the second half of this game, win it 30-27, and the next week their offense would be very, very pertinent as they would go on to defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers 23-20 in that game where Torrey Smith had that game-winning touchdown. So a nice bounce back by the offense there, although it did take them some time to get going in that game. All right, the next one we're going to look at, we're going to go to the 2012 season. Again, another game that we mentioned in the pod. The Ravens offense started out hot in 2012, scoring 44 points against Cincinnati, 23 against the Eagles, 31 against Patriots, 23 against the Browns before a dud in Kansas City. Again, a game against a team that was struggling. The Ravens would only manage 3 field goals in this game. The Chiefs themselves would manage 2, so the Ravens would escape with a 9-6 victory. But the offense, this was just a very odd performance. One of the odder things that's happened in Ravens history really was just the lack of being able to score touchdowns in this game. And the Ravens have bounced back pretty nicely. The next week against the Dallas Cowboys in a back-and-forth game, the Ravens would end up winning this game 31-29 when the Cowboys would miss the potential game-winning field goal. Really no issues for the offense here. It would take them till the second quarter to score a touchdown, but they would get 2 in that second quarter and then a touchdown in the third and the fourth, which set the offense back onto a little bit of a roller coaster ride for the rest of the year, as we know, which would eventually lead to the changing of offensive coordinator, which has been gone over extensively, and then eventually lead the Ravens to the Super Bowl. So that's how they were able to respond in 2012. Another year we'll look at 2014, one of the best offenses, if not the best offense, at least from a regular season perspective, of the Joe Flacco era. This was a team that could score points. Many games this year they were in the high 20s, in the 30s. But with 2 weeks to go in the season, in 2014, the Ravens traveled down to Houston needing a win to secure their playoff spot. But their offense now, while they were going against a very good defense in Houston, still 13 points from this offense was less than would have been expected in that case. The Ravens had played tough defenses that year and had scored more points in those situations. But that just wasn't what happened that week. The offense just wasn't in sync, and the Ravens lost one pretty cleanly, 25-13 to the Texans, which led them to Week 17 matchup against the Cleveland Browns for the playoffs, really. If they didn't win this game, they were going to very likely lose out in the tiebreakers. And their offense, again, just like the game against the Cardinals, stalled out early on, and going into the fourth quarter, the Browns held a 10-3 lead. But finally in this fourth quarter of that game, similar to the game against the Panthers we just saw, Joe Flacco and Torrey Smith would take over, and the Ravens would be able to get 2 touchdowns in that quarter, and that would end up being enough to win that game. The 16-yard touchdown pass to Torrey Smith, followed by a 2-yard pass to Kamar Aiken on the following drive, and that was enough to get the Ravens in the playoffs. And then we know that their offense lit fire in the playoffs in those 2 games they were in. Unfortunately, just not quite enough to beat New England that year, and they exited in the divisional round. And then the last game we'll look at, 2020. This one's a little different, I think, than the others, because this isn't an instance of the offense failing to score points, but I think it's still an instance of the offense just not performing as expected. We look at the game coming out of the bye. In 2020, the Ravens hosted the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were at that point undefeated in their season. The Ravens only coming into that game with just 1 loss, and that game got off to a bad start for the offense right at the beginning. Not Joe Flacco. This is the Lamar Jackson era. Lamar Jackson's first pass of that game intercepted by the Steelers, run back for a touchdown, and that would just be a sign of things to come for this game. Lamar Jackson, uncharacteristically, had some issues with the turnovers in this game. 2 interceptions in the game, as well as 2 lost fumbles on 3 fumbles in total. He was able to prevent the third one from being lost. But yeah, the Ravens just couldn't get their offense in sync in this game. And obviously we can remember this game as the game where afterwards Marquise Brown had that tweet, the infamous tweet, and there was just questions. This is what was going on with the offense in that game, and would this be a sign of things to come? And, the offense was a little rocky after that going forward. They were able to grind out a 24-10 lead or win against the Indianapolis Colts the following week. That was a game they would be trailing by a field goal going into the half, but then score 17 unanswered points in the second half. And then the next week was the tsunami they had to play through in New England, which they would lose by 6 points. And then followed by that, you had the overtime loss to the Tennessee Titans at home in another game where the offense got out to, I wouldn't say a lethargic start, but still one you wanted to be a little better. I guess that one was more of a second half offensive issue in that game. And then unfortunately the COVID apocalypse against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where practically the entire offense was out of that game due to COVID, and that game got pushed and pushed and pushed till they finally played it. The game that was supposed to be on the earliest that it could be that week ended up being the absolute latest on Wednesday night, or Wednesday afternoon, I should say. But, after that, the offense would catch fire. We know that Lamar Jackson would come back from COVID, 34 points against Dallas, 47 points against Cleveland, 40 points against Jacksonville, 27 against the Giants, 38 against the Bengals, 20 against the Titans before faltering badly against Buffalo. So, just looking back this week at some times, when the Ravens head into a bit of an offensive hiccup, and how they responded from it. And again, we're just going to have to see what happens this year. There's some unique challenges this season. We knew going into the season that wide receiver was an issue with this team with the trading away of Marquise Brown. We had high hopes for Rashad Bateman, and he showed flashes this year, but he's out for the season, unfortunately. So the Ravens are going to have to find someone to step up in the passing attack aside from Mark Andrews to be a consistent weapon. We've seen flashes from Duvernay, flashes from Robinson, flashes from Likely. Can any of those three guys step up and be a consistent target? Can James Prochet or Deshaun Jackson come in and be that guy? We'll just have to see. Or is it just going to be, are they going to be able to just run the ball to the Super Bowl? That one seems like the least likely of the option. It seems like they're going to have to find someone to get back this passing game on track. But we'll see what happens. Going down in Jacksonville should be a good game, should be good weather. Hopefully the Ravens can come out with a big win. But as we said in the podcast, this is a young Jacksonville team coming off a bye. They could come out with some renewed energy and give the Ravens some trouble. But we'll see what happens, and hope you guys enjoyed this week's podcast. Feel free to leave any comments of any other times you can think of that the Ravens recovered nicely from unexpected offensive struggles. And if you like this content, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as our podcast for great Ravens content all season long.